Hello and welcome to our chronological reading of the Bible. We are on day 16. We are back in Genesis after just finishing up Job. And so we are headed back into the story of Abraham, who is at this point still called Abram. So day 16, we're doing Genesis 12 through 15. So it's 3 chapters. So we're just going to read the whole thing and then go back and just summarize what we looked at, make sure everything made sense, do a little bit of study. I have Logos open. We can hop into some maps and some definitions and look at some footnotes, and we'll highlight things if they don't make sense as we read. Now the Lord said to Abram, "Go out from your country, your relatives, and your father's household to the land that I will show you. Then I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. And I will make your name great, so that you will exemplify divine blessing. I will bless those who bless you, but the one who treats you lightly I must curse, and all the families of the earth will bless one another by your name." So Abram left, just as the Lord had told him to do, and Lot went with him. Now Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. And Abram took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and all the possessions they had accumulated and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they left the land of Canaan. They entered the land of Canaan. Abram traveled through the land as far as the oak tree of Moreh at Shechem. At that time the Canaanites were in the land. The Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your descendants I will give this land." So Abram built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. Then he moved from there to the hill country east of Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. There he built an altar to the Lord and worshipped the Lord. Abram continually journeyed by stages down to the Negev. The promised blessing jeopardized. There was a famine in the land, so Abram went down to Egypt to stay for a while because the famine was severe. As he approached Egypt, he said to his wife Sarai, "Look, I know that you are a beautiful woman. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife.' Then they will kill me, but will keep you alive. So tell them you are my sister, so that it may go well for me because of you, and my life will be spared on account of you." When Abram entered Egypt, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful. When Pharaoh's officials saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh. So Abram's wife was taken into the household of Pharaoh. And he did treat Abram well on the account of her. Abram received sheep and cattle, male donkeys, male servants, female donkeys, and camels. But the Lord struck Pharaoh and his household with severe disease because of Sarai, Abram's wife. So Pharaoh summoned Abram and said, "What is this you have done to me? Why didn't you tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say, 'She is my sister,' so that I took her to be my wife? Here is your wife. Take her and go." Pharaoh gave his men orders about Abram, and so they expelled him, along with his wife and all his possessions. Abram's solution to the strife. So Abram went up from Egypt into the Negev. He took his wife and all his possessions with him, as well as Lot. Now Abram was very wealthy in livestock, silver, and gold. And he journeyed from place to place from the Negev as far as Bethel. He returned to the place where he had pitched his tent at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai. This was the place where he had first built the altar, and there Abram worshipped the Lord. Now Lot, who was traveling with Abram, also had flocks, herds, and tents. But the land could not support them while they were living side by side. Because their possessions were so great, they were not able to live alongside one another. So there were quarrels between Abram's herdsmen and Lot's herdsmen. Now the Canaanites and the Perizzites were living in the land at that time. Abram said to Lot, "Let there be no quarreling between me and you, and between my herdsmen and your herdsmen, for we are close relatives. Is not the whole land before you? Separate yourself now from me. If you go to the left, then I'll go to the right. But if you go to the right, then I'll go to the left." Lot looked up and saw the whole region of the Jordan. He noticed that all of it was well watered, before the Lord obliterated Sodom and Gomorrah. Like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, all the way to Zoar, Lot chose for himself the whole region of the Jordan and traveled towards the east. So the relatives separated from each other. Abram settled in the land of Canaan, but Lot settled among the cities of the Jordan plain and pitched his tents next to Sodom. Now the people of Sodom were extremely wicked rebels against the Lord. After Lot had departed, the Lord said to Abram, "Look from the place where you stand to the north, south, east, and west. I will give all the land that you see to you and your descendants forever. And I will make your descendants like the dust of the earth, so that if anyone is able to count the dust of the earth, then your descendants also can be counted. Get up and walk throughout the land, for I will give it to you." So Abram moved his tents and went to live by the oaks of the Mamre in Hebron, for he built an altar to the Lord there. The blessings of victory for God's people. At that time, Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Kedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of nations, went to war against Bera, king of Sodom, Birsha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemeber, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is, Zor. These last 5 kings joined forces in the valley of Siddim, that is, the Salt Sea. For 12 years they had served Kedorlaomer, but in the 13th year they rebelled. In the 14th year, Kedorlaomer and the kings who were his allies came and defeated the Rephaites in the Ashteroth Karnaim, the Zuzites in Ham, the Emites in Shavah Kiriathaim, and the Horites in their hill country of Seir, as far as El Paran, which is near the desert. When they attacked En Mishpap, that is, Kadesh, again, and they conquered all the territory of the Amalekites, as well as the Amorites who were living in the Hazazon Tamar. Then the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is, Zor, went out and prepared for battle. In the valley of Siddim they met Kedorlaomer, king of Elam, Tidal, king of nations, Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Elasar. 4 kings fought against 5. Now the valley of Siddim was full of tar pits. When the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, they fell into them, but some survivors fled to the hills. The 4 victorious kings all took possessions and food of Sodom and Gomorrah and left. They also took Abram's nephew Lot and his possessions when they left, for Lot was living in Sodom. A fugitive came and told Abram the Hebrew. Now Abram was living by the oaks of Mamre the Amorite, the brother of Eshcol and Aner. All these were allied by the treaty with Abram. When Abram heard that his nephew had been taken captive, he mobilized his 318 trained men who'd been born in his household, and he pursued the invaders as far as Dan. Then, during the night, Abram divided his forces against them and defeated them. He chased them as far as Hobah, which is north of Damascus. He retrieved all the stolen property. He also brought back his nephew Lot and his possessions, as well as the woman and the rest of the people. After Abram returned from defeating Kedorlaomer and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet Abram in the valley of Shavah, known as the King's Valley. Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. Now he was priest of the Most High God. He blessed Abram, saying, "Blessed be Abram by the Most High God, creator of heaven and earth. Worthy of praise is the Most High God, who delivered your enemies into your hand." Abram gave Melchizedek 1/10 of everything. Then the king of Sodom said to Abram, "Give me the people and take the possessions for yourself." But Abram replied to the king of Sodom, "I raise my hand to the Lord, the Most High God, creator of heaven and earth, and vow that I will take nothing belonging to you, not even a thread or a strap of sandal. That way you can never say, 'It is I who made Abram rich.' I will take nothing except compensation for what young men have eaten. As for the share of the men who went with me, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre, let them take their share." The cutting of the covenant. After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. "Fear not, Abram, I am your shield and the one who will reward you in great abundance." But Abram said, O sovereign Lord, what will you give me, since I continue to be childless, and my heir is Eliezer of Damascus? Abram added, Since you have not given me a descendant, then look, one born in my house will be my heir. But look, the word of the Lord came to him. This man will not be your heir, but instead a son who comes from your own body will be your heir. The Lord took him outside and said, Gaze into the sky and count the stars, if you are able to count them. Then he said to him, So will your descendants be. Abram believed the Lord, and the Lord considered his response of faith as proof of genuine loyalty. The Lord said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out from Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to possess. But Abram said, O sovereign Lord, by what can I know that I am to possess it? The Lord said to him, Take for me a heifer, a goat, and a ram, each 3 years old, along with a dove and a young pigeon. So Abram took all of these for him and cut them in two and placed each half opposite the other. But he did not cut the birds in half. When birds of prey came down on the carcasses, Abram drove them away. When the sun went down, Abram fell sound asleep, and the great terror overwhelmed him. Then the Lord said to Abram, Know for certain that your descendants will be strangers in a foreign country. They will be enslaved and oppressed for 400 years. But I will execute judgment on the nation that they will serve. Afterward, they will come out with many possessions. But as for you, you will go to your ancestors in peace and be buried at a good old age. In the 4th generation, your descendants will return here, for the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its limit. When the sun had gone down and it was dark, a smoking firepot with a flaming torch passed between the animal parts. That day the Lord made a covenant with Abram. To your descendants I give this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates River, the land of the Kenites, Kenizzites, Kadmonites, Hittites, Perizzites, Rephaites, Amorites, Canaanites, Girgashites, and Jebusites. And that is today's reading. So we're going to mark that as done. Yay. Now, going back through some of the stuff we just read. Okay, so the CSB Study Bible Notes. This has a map of the migration of Abraham, it says here. So he starts in Ur, and then they go north. So I guess they haven't reached all of these things yet. So Lot chose the Jordan River area. So Lot chose down here. So here's the Jordan River. Okay, so here's Baghdad. I wonder if that's the same Baghdad as today. Okay, so that's the general area we're in. So Abram's journey from Haran to Bethel was another 700 miles. The distance from Ur to Haran was 700 miles. That's a very long way. Okay, let's go through and summarize what we just read. Okay, I have ChatGPT open here just because it's fun. I'll zoom in a little bit. So I asked it to summarize Genesis 12, 13, 14, and 15, each in its own sentence, which so far seems pretty accurate. So Genesis 12, Abraham is called by God to leave his home and become the father of many nations. 13 is Abraham and Lot separate their flocks due to overcrowding. 14 is Abraham rescues Lot from being captured in battle and receives blessing from Melchizedek. 15, God makes a covenant with Abraham and promises him numerous descendants in the land of Canaan. Okay, that summarizes it for me. I know that wasn't very in-depth, but sometimes it's nice to get that little overview. One thing it mentions here is that it says, go out from your country, your relatives, and your father's household. So it specifically says, go out from your country, your relatives, and your father's household. So leave what you know, and I will do something good for you. Leaving one thing in order to receive something else better. Okay, here's a resource that I just found, which is Matthew Henry's Concise Commentary on the Bible. And Matthew Henry is one that I've heard a bunch about. Okay, chapter 12, it has a little more summary. So God calls Abram, blesses him with the promise of Christ. A promise of Christ. Does it actually have a promise of Christ? 1 through 3, a promise of Christ. Let's see, does it say that? Let's see. In thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. Jesus Christ is the great blessing of the world, the greatest ever this world has possessed. So I guess he's saying That seems like a stretch. I mean, I'm sure it is true, but it seems like a stretch just from this text here. I'm kind of already not liking this reference, using this reference. Let's just go back to text comparison and the study Bible. How about that? I did hear a note just today that the land of Canaan and the Canaanites are not related to Cain. As a note there, it's just a common name. So he went to the hill country east of Bethel and pitched his tent there, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. So let's look where that is on this map. So where's Bethel? Am I missing it? Okay, I'm not seeing it on this map, so maybe it's just not here. Is it here? So, here we go. Okay, Bethel and Ai. So he pitched his tent right around here, which is near Jericho and Salem, Hebron. Okay, so it's near the Dead Sea, which is the Sea of Salt it mentions. Okay, so right around here near Jericho. So we go back up to this map here. It's around, here it is. Okay, I found it. Bethel. I'm sure someone was watching this saying, no, Tracy's over there. Okay, so down here, that's a long distance. So yeah, getting pretty close to Egypt, but near the Dead Sea. So I had this question, how did the Pharaoh find out and know that these things that were happening to him were because Sarai was married? And I don't understand how Pharaoh just knew that. But the Lord struck Pharaoh and his household with severe disease because of Sarai. Now, was this some type of, God told them that it was because of that? 12:17 says, this doesn't really say how Pharaoh knew. I mean, this is, we don't know, so how would it know, right? But so some type of disease. Okay, maybe that's a question left unanswered. So what was Zor? We go back to this map. Zor is down here. So he was up here in Bethel, went down to Zor. Okay, so here, all these kings was interesting to me. I was curious if there were notes about what these kings were doing, what was happening at the time. It said the prosperity of the lower Jordan River Valley attracted not only Lot, but also got the attention of 4 Asian kings, hundreds of miles to the north and east. While scholars cannot match the names here with names of the kings found in non-biblical sources, the following observations have been made. Shederalohram, the Elam one. It's a deity name. Mari, a Semitic name. Modern Iraq, southwest Iran. And that Elazar and Goim are unknown locations. So the North Asian kings probably waged war against the peoples of southern Jordan Valley in order to control a trade route, the King's Highway in the area of modern Jordan, as well as the food supply. The food produced there would have been particularly useful for armies marching to Egypt or fighting other nations in the region. The Valley of Siddim, that is the Sea of Salt. Honestly, there's a lot of names here, and I tried to just read them and take them in and just over time start to understand what's happening. Now the Valley of Siddim was full of tar pits. We know that area is known for its oil. The Valley of Siddim. So, I mean, the Valley, here we go. Valley of Siddim here. They fell into them, but some survivors fled to the hills. I wonder how you fall into a tar pit and not notice it. Okay, I was curious what the priest of the Most High God, was that the same God of Abram or a different God? I wanted to see what the note was on this. So this is 14:18. Some interpreters have thought that this important biblical figure was a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ because of the way the book of Hebrews describes him. It's more likely he was an actual Jebusite priest and king of Salem, the old name for Jerusalem. Well, that's interesting. Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out the bread and wine. That's interesting. The book that gives genealogies of all the significant people, this man appears on the scene with no reference to father or mother and disappears just as quickly. But he stands out in biblical memory as a royal priest in the holy city. Yeah, that's It just comes out of nowhere, considering everything else does have that genealogy. Like, what is this? Under divine inspiration, David foresaw that his royal descendant would be both his lord and a priest after the order of Melchizedek. David, of course, was the first Israelite to occupy the royal city of Melchizedek, for the city was not taken until Joab captured it for David. So it says Melchizedek was the priest of the Most High God, and then right next it says, blessed be Abram by the Most High God. And then Abram says, I raise my hand to the Lord, the Most High God, creator of heaven and earth. So I think this is talking about the same God. So Melchizedek, that must be why some people think that he is a pre-incarnate of Jesus, because it does seem to be of the same line. And there he's being called the priest of the Most High God. And then we get to the part where Abram does the sacrifices to the Lord. I guess it's not a sacrifice, it's a sign that the Lord is showing him that this is how you'll know for certain that your descendants will be. So this is a covenant made with Abram. To your descendants I give this land. So this is the blessed land, that the promised land. Here's the prophecy of being exiled for 400 years. But why did he not cut the birds in half? I'm curious. See, that's 15:10. Using a solemn ceremony, God cut the covenant with Abram. In making such a binding covenant, God was guaranteeing to the patriarch the fulfillment of the promises. The idea of cutting a covenant literally involves cutting the animals as a symbolism of the oath. When Abram got up and drove the birds of prey away, this symbolized his task to protect the covenant as much as possible. Well, that's interesting. So there's symbolism happening here, not just, I'm sure there is. It's not something unheard of. Heifer, goat, and young ram, each 3 years old, along with a dove and a young pigeon. So a lot of times doves are used as symbolism for God and Jesus and coming down. So maybe he did not cut the birds in half because that is not being divided. And it says the Bible's clear, God will keep his promises to us, even if, like Abram, we die without receiving all the promises. Ultimately, all the promises will be fulfilled in the life to come. Okay, so we're going to call that good for today, and thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you tomorrow.